So I'm back again with Neeshee, Pandit of AtmaAstrology.com. We're continuing our discussion on Ayurveda and how it relates to astrology. In our last talk, we discussed the elements and how the elements are related to planets in particular. And in this video, we're going to discuss that previous idea on the three qualities of prana and how they also relate to the planets. So, Neeshee. So we've got three qualities of prana. If you don't mind rehashing what those are, re-explaining them, and then we can dig into how they relate to the planets in astrology.
Okay, so previously we discussed these three aspects of prana, soma, agni, and marut, as being like macro doshas in a way. So this is how the five elements condense into three fundamental energies. And when those three fundamental energies flow into our body minds, that's what we're calling doshas. So that's just a simple overview of the concept. As I said before, we're talking about three energies, but they're really expressions or modes of one universal life energy, which is prana.
Okay. Yes.
Now we're going to relate this to the planets. And the thing is that this whole discussion of these three aspects of prana comes from an astrological understanding of life.
Okay.
These three are not being like connected after the fact. These three concepts come out of astrology. So again, this is just a point I like to make over and over again, is that astrology and Ayurveda, at a certain point, you can't really tell, which one came first. And personally, I think astrology came before everything. But you can just see that there's a lot of medical concepts that are just completely astrological in nature, completely. This is one of those. So soma is discussed in the Vedas, in the Rig Veda in particular. Soma and Agni are major deities in the Rig Veda. And soma is the deity of growth and that nurtures plants and vegetables and things like that. So that's just a way of describing how the moon, soma is the moon, and that's discussed very clearly as well. I quoted the verse earlier, Chandravaya Somaha, which means that the moon is soma. So the moon was deified as soma, a Vedic deity. And what was really being indicated by that, there was just an energy. Deities are just aspects of prana. It's another way of understanding, Hinduism even. Mm-hmm. So soma is the deification of the moon, and that which allows for the nourishment of things, that which allows things to grow. And the moon, as we know, I discussed in the elements video, is made of water and air. And soma is made of water, primarily water, and earth also. So it's that watery component that is what is the common factor between soma and the moon. Now, moon also has air element associated with it because that substance has to flow. Okay. And with soma, we're just looking at water and earth, basically.
Okay.
But that's okay. So the moon is soma. Agni is the sun. Okay, the foundation of life, the fire of life. Agni is described as basically the origin of everything in the Vedas. So that is a reference to the sun. That one's really straightforward. Fire element is the common factor there. Mm-hmm. And marut is the aspect of prana that's flow itself, and which relates to space element and also air element. Okay. And that one I haven't found a traditional reference for, but I put forward, my theory that it relates to Jupiter.
Okay. Yes.
And so Jupiter also is, of course, ether element. And now, the point I want to make here is, how do all these three relate to the rest of the planets? Okay, so we have our three foundation aspects of prana. And so we have the sun, moon, and Jupiter as three foundation planets then. And I think that's very true if you think about the nature of the sun, the moon, and Jupiter. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, these planets are like a potentiality in a certain way. We're looking at it. Like we were discussing in the elements video, the potentiality of fire is realized as creative fire in Mars. Mm-hmm. Okay? So Mars falls under Agni, that aspect of prana.
Okay.
And then Soma, which is the moon, that quality exists as potentiality in the moon, but it's realized in Venus. Okay, so Venus is also falls under Soma.
Okay.
And then Marut is space and air. And so it's the flow and also that from which everything comes. So that's Jupiter, we already got that. It's going to relate to Saturn, because Saturn is the air element, and it's going to relate to Rahu and Ketu, which I also discussed as ether element.
Right.
So that's how the three aspects of prana are manifested astrologically.
Okay. So you left out one planet, though.
I did, didn't I? Mercury.
Yes.
And that's
So,
because
yeah, go ahead. I know we discussed before we even started the video that Mercury has it all.
Mercury has it all. That's the point. Mercury has it all, and that's why Mercury has all three aspects of prana, basically.
Right.
And I want to say a little bit more about that because it really reveals something about the nature of Mercury. Mm-hmm. Mercury is a major planet, and its rashis are super important for understanding the flow of prana in our bodies. And that's why Mercury is a major health planet. That's why we look at, Virgo is the natural sixth house.
Right.
Right? And Virgo rules the intestines, which is, in Ayurveda, we're really obsessed with understanding the digestive process as like the function of Agni. And so if there's a breakdown in that process, that's the beginning of disease, mm-hmm. right? So the beginning of disease is really happening in Virgo, okay? So within Mercury sign, we have like basically the epitomization of Agni, mm-hmm. right? And that's the foundation element from which everything arises, according to the Vedic understanding. Okay. So there's something about Mercury that epitomizes prana altogether.
Right.
The fact that it contains all the doshas within it, its earth element, all the elements are within it. It's a powerful expression of prana.
Right. So then with Mercury, the reason we didn't break it down into one of the specifics, it's because Mercury essentially can be thought of as being associated with sort of the whole of prana rather than the specifics.
Exactly.
Right. And, that's why they say oftentimes astrologically that if your Mercury is doing very well in your chart, pretty much the rest of your chart's probably going to do well too.
Right.
So I would assume, again, I know we'll get into this when we actually do the class of looking at these things, but that if a person's Mercury is doing pretty well, that helps them in general it indicates how their prana is naturally maybe going to be, I don't know, how would you say, stronger, more effective, more fluid? I mean, what would...
It's going to be more efficient, right?
More efficient, yeah, right.
It's going to be more efficient, and so a good Mercury allows a person to basically manage their life in a way that works. Mm-hmm. And that includes all aspects of life. All the elements are within that. All of the three aspects of prana are in that. And so also, when you look at people who are like a truly mixed constitution, like a truly tridoshic people, they always have a strong Mercury, and that's one of the ways you can tell is that all three aspects of prana are kind of evenly distributed in them.
Right.
They've got Soma, they've got Agni, and they've got Marut, whereas when those three aspects flow in other people to varying proportions, that's where you see a predominance of like, oh yeah, he's got a strong sun, really a Mars type person, things
right.
like that.
Yeah. And, I suppose it all boils down to perspective in the individual as well, because I remember when we were going out to visit Ernst and he was trying to figure out who was going to fit where in the car. And then he said, oh, well, Ryan's definitely got to sit in the front seat because he's just too big. And and Neeshee and Nicole and Corey, they can all like cram in together. And,
that's right.
And here I was thinking I was a small person. But I guess my Mercury wasn't working as well in regards to tridoshic as I thought. Yeah. So anyway, he gave me a complex about my weight that weekend.
You're bigger than you thought you were.
Yeah, I am. So anyway, time will do that. But how old are you?
28.
Oh yeah, I remember 28.
you were much skinnier then.
I was.
Everybody was, right?
Yeah. Anyway, all right. So we're taking the sidetrack here. Let's get back on. So we've got Mercury, which kind of deals with the consistency or the efficiency of prana in general. And then you mentioned Saturn and Jupiter as a pair for Marut. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. And then Agni.
Rahu and Ketu.
And Rahu and Ketu, right? And so Agni, well, that's interesting. You know, if you think about it, so you've got Agni, which is Mars and the Sun, and then Soma, Moon and Venus, and then what you kind of put as Marut were Jupiter, Saturn, and the nodes of the Moon. And even though the nodes of the Moon are indicative of how the Moon, you know, goes around the Earth in relationship to the ecliptic, I've often thought of Rahu and Ketu as kind of, in a sense, having effects like outer planets.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so now we've got the Marut aspect of things with Jupiter and Saturn, which are the planets that are as far away as we can get. And then, in a sense, if Rahu and Ketu, I don't want to say mimic, but has similar energies as the outer planets, the Marut energy is more of this. I don't know. It makes me think of it as almost like a holding energy, or but I guess that makes sense with the whole ether element in general.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Everything happens within that.
It is like that.
Okay.
And so when we understand that, prana is comprised of these three aspects and that we need all of them to be in balance with each other in order for our life energy to be flowing in a balanced way. You need enough Agni to transform the Soma, but you need enough Soma to transform so that you have like sufficiency of embodiment in life, We're not here just to wither away. So that's what Soma provides us, Agni is going to help utilize that Soma so that we grow, transform. And then you need Marut, because without Marut, nothing's happening.
Right.
There's just nothing going on. Okay? So life, that's why, the order is Soma, Agni, Marut. I don't know why that order is the way it is. That's just how my teacher talked about it a lot. But Marut is really the first, it has a primacy among those three.
Right. So, well, so that brings up, let's see if I can remember the question I had. Hold on a minute. I'm going to pause the video so I can think about what I was going to say. So, okay. So this may or may not have any, it may not be applicable to anything we've been talking about, but I remember reading, actually it was recently in a book that was, had the talks of Ramana Maharshi in it. And he was discussing, or someone was asking him about the three different bodies. The physical body, astral body, and causal body. And so that, anyway, this whole discussion got me thinking about that, because, one of the things he would say is that the biggest problem we seem to have is too much focus on being a physical body. Right. And the follow-up question was, well, when the body perishes, the physical body perishes, what about the astral and causal body? And he came back and he said, all those other bodies are, the root of their idea is based on the physical body. So if you take care of that difficulty that you have with the physical body, those other bodies won't be a thing, in a sense. So anyway, the reason I brought that up is because I was thinking about Soma, Agni, and Marut, and kind of an association with them to the three bodies. And when you're kind of thinking about these things in Ayurveda, how do you figure out which one is like an aspect of prana you focus on? Do you just pull those planets out of the chart and say, all right, let's look at the Agni planets, let's look at the Soma planets, let's look at the Marut planets, and see how are they functioning by dignity? I mean, or do you even do it is that even something that you look at? Do you understand my question? I
understand your question. Okay. Yeah. In other words, like, how do you utilize the concept?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the way I look at it is that when I see a chart and I'm seeing like all the planets and I know what they are and how they relate to all these things, and I'm basically trying to assess, let's even zoom out further. When we're looking at astrology, we're looking at the flow of life energy in a person altogether. Right. We're just trying to see like what's going on with that. What does that indicate? and especially medically. And so medically, I'm interested in knowing, okay, somebody has a problem. I know there's an issue with the life energy. There just is. That's the only way you can get an imbalance. So either that life energy isn't flowing, which is a marut issue,
Right.
or they don't have enough Agni to transform that which they have, and that's an issue, so they're blocked. Right. Or they don't have enough to transform, which means they don't have enough soma. And so they have all the flow, they have all the transformative energy, they don't have enough substance to make something out of it, and so they're suffering.
Right.
Okay. You'd have that.
I see. So what you're saying is it breaks down to sort of if there's a planet with, or if there's a difficulty with the planets that deal with soma, then it may be that this is just a broad generalization, but it may be that they need to have more, they need to actually take in more nourishment of some sort. Exactly. Right. And if it's Agni, they've got the nourishment. It's just they don't have the ability to transform that nourishment into something useful.
That's right.
And then with the Marut, they can have the stuff that they need. They can have the ability to transform it, but either there's not enough intelligence or emphasis on the ability to move those things around that it doesn't get to where it needs to go.
That's right. In other words, it's missing the spark that would make the flame and burn the oil that is the soma.
Right. Okay. All right. That makes perfect sense then. Okay. That answered my oddly roundabout question starting with Ramana Maharshi. So, all right. Okay. So is there anything else then about these particular ideas with the 3 qualities of prana you'd like to discuss before moving on to the doshas?
Well, I think another way of looking at it is that it's pretty much parallel to like the Taoist concept of qi, yin, and yang. Mm-hmm. So there's like just the flow itself, the life energy, and then there's like its polarity and manifestation.
Right. Okay.
So that's just similar concept here, but we're just relating it very concretely to elements, doshas, and planets.
Yeah, it makes total sense. I mean, it's a wonderful way to think about it. Okay. All right, well, good. We'll go ahead and conclude here with this little section. And next up, we'll be discussing the doshas and the planets, correct?
That's right.
Yeah, okay. All right, thanks again, Neeshee.
Sure.